Hello, I am Anawiltos today, bringing you once again another article from the Huffington Post. This time, I looked at the title of this article, and the title, I just had to look at this article, because look at that title. That's a very bold title you see on there. It's saying, Trump expels tens of thousands of Haitians in another step toward ethnic cleansing. Holy cannoli, ethnic cleansing. And then it shows some random picture somewhere where it's white power, a swastika, another swastika, and WP white power stuff, which I don't know if that has anything related to the actual story. It just looks like some random picture somewhere. But maybe they'll explain that in the article in itself. And for those of you who are wondering, I am a bit ill today. So if I sound a bit weird, if I cough a bit, if I give a little sniffle, that's why. So this article is from the Huffington Post, but here we're seeing a label that says Center for Community Change Action Contributor, Social Justice Organization. I think I know where this is going. By Deepak Bhargava and Kika Matos. Now, do not harass these individuals. If you do end up contacting these individuals, do be respectful, but don't harass anyone. Flickr Creative Commons. So this is literally just a random image about anything. But, again, white power, swastikas, you're already making a Nazi comparison. Holy cannoli. In his continued attempt to purge our nation of immigrants of color. Really? Holy cannoli. I don't know where this is coming from. President Trump decided to expel up to 60,000 Haitians who fled a devastating earthquake in search of safety. Already this year, he ended temporary protected status, known as TPS, for those from Liberia, Sudan, Sierra Leone, Guinea, and several thousand Nicaraguans. Note that the status that he ended was temporary. In other words, it's supposed to end sometime. Now, of course, I don't know the news story surrounding this, so maybe it was ended prematurely. Maybe that's a point you could make. I don't know. But my point is that it's got to end sometime if it's temporary. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of immigrants from other Central America, I don't know which other Central America you know, but I know of only one Central America, are anxiously awaiting a decision about their futures. In January, temporary protected status is a program that allows immigrants fleeing war, genocide, or natural disasters to seek refuge in the United States. Still, it's temporary, though. In many cases, ending TPS amounts to a death sentence for people forced to return to unsafe and violent conditions. Well, presumably, this was probably due to the natural disaster that occurred in Haiti a number of years ago. That's just my guess. Oh yeah, it is. It is. So, you know, that's been years ago. Haiti has had some time to rebuild. They've had considerable aid. And these people weren't fleeing because of any political reason. They were fleeing because their lives were in danger from a natural disaster. But now that's over, and I don't see a problem in sending them back home now that all is over, honestly. It is time. We call what this administration is doing by its proper name. Ethnic cleansing. Simply put, Trump wants to get rid of immigrants who are black, brown, or don't fit his delusion of how America should look. Citation needed. Come on. You know, say what you want about Trump, but I don't think you've got any actual evidence for this. What you note here in this article is that they are conflating ethnicity with nationality, which are two entirely different things, which in some cases overlap. In which case you would have an ethno-state, which is, by the way, what the white supremacists want. They want an ethno-state, which is not something that Trump in any way has been going for. To show me where Trump is talking out against black, brown, or other individuals that fit his delusion of how America should look, who already live in the United States, who are citizens of the United States. Otherwise, I think you're really putting a big category error in here. This is a big category. You're classifying these individuals as individuals that come from other nation states and not as individuals who are necessarily of other races. Because I don't know if you know this, but there are whites who live in Haiti, there are whites who live in Nicaragua, there are whites who live in Liberia, Sudan, Sierra Leone, Guinea. There are whites that live in those places too. You know, it's not just a one-color country, okay? Okay. So I think this is really a huge category error, and it is used to strawman Trump into a position that he isn't actually taking. The UN Commission defines ethnic cleansing as an attempt to create ethnically homogeneous geographic areas through the deportation or forcible displacement of people belonging to particular ethnic groups. Now, you're going to have to describe to me how this attempt to target individuals of other nationalities who aren't citizens of the United States and only have a temporary allowance to live in the United States is the same thing as targeting individuals for their ethnicity, because it categorically isn't the same thing. Unless you want me to believe that all Nicaraguans are of the same ethnicity, that all Guineans are of the same ethnicity, that all Haitians have the same ethnicity, are all from the same ethnic background. You want me to believe that all these other countries are these homogeneous countries where everybody is the same color and has the same ethnic features, and there's no diversity in any place but the U.S. Is that what you want me to believe? Because that's the only way your point would make sense. But anyway, let's continue. Well, actually, even then, it wouldn't make sense due to other issues. So I don't think that what's happening here is falling under that definition, since you made a category error at the start of the article. Some may think this label unfair given history's most egregious ethnic cleansing campaigns, including the Turkish massacre of Armenians during World War I. That's right, I do not enjoy people who say Armenians, I say Armenians. The annihilation of 6 million Jews by Hitler's Nazi army. Let's not forget that that's only the Jews that Hitler killed. Hitler killed a lot of other people besides Jews as well. So let's not downplay Hitler here, okay? I know how much you like to downplay Hitler, but don't downplay Hitler here, okay? The forced displacement and mass killings in the former Yugoslavia and Rwanda in the 1990s. But ethnic cleansing can take more insidious forms. History is replete with examples of ethnic cleansing through deportation and forced migration. Oh, you mean like, after World War II, when the Soviet Union forced all the Germans in Eastern Europe to move into Germany. biggest Biggest forced migration in European history, but of course, that's not actual ethnic cleansing. By the way, for any of you who are wondering, I am not contrasting that to justify Hitler. I am condemning both sides of the issue here, just so that everyone knows where I stand on this. Muammar Gaddafi famously forcibly expelled some 150,000 Italians after gaining power, just because, yeah, you know what? There you go. I mean, of course, you could have used a much bigger example at the end of World War II, but fair enough. In October 2006, Niger attempted to deport 150,000 Arabs living in the Diffa region of eastern Niger to Chad. More than 100,000 people remain refugees since the 1990 mass expulsion of southern Lhotshampas people by the northern Druk majority in Bhutan. Really? I didn't know about that. Well, I guess you learn something new every day. There are dozens of other examples. Historically, the use of mass deportation machinery has been a crucial element of ethnic cleansing. But the problem here is that you're conflating nationality with ethnicity, and you are assuming that individuals of certain nations who are not citizens of the United States and have only temporary access to the United States should have a right to live in the United States without being sent back to their homelands at all ever. That is what you are making an assumption of. And honestly, that I think is not ethnic cleansing. There is no recent precedent in U.S. history for what we're experiencing now. Yep. You have to go back to 1954's Operation Wetback, which forcefully removed 1.1 million Mexicans by drawing a dubious line between who was and who was not an American. I don't know about that, so I can't comment on that. The Japanese internment camps during World War II, which is not an ethnic cleansing because they weren't actually trying to get rid of the Japanese. So I can't really call that an ethnic cleansing. They weren't putting them somewhere outside of a country. They weren't killing them. They were imprisoning a lot of people who hadn't committed any crimes, which I think is unjust. But I can't think you can call that ethnic cleansing. Or to the anti-immigrant hysteria of the 1920s to find an equivalent. Let's consider the pieces of the ethnic cleansing case. Okay. Now, I presume that the author of this article is going to explain to me that I've been wrong, there hasn't been a category error here, that all these things are indeed true about Donald Trump. Let's find out. There is President Trump's stated intention to detain and deport millions of undocumented immigrants, overwhelmingly people of color. Well, first of all, the fact that you say overwhelmingly implies that not all of them, that only most and not all of them are people of color. And if you're implying that Donald Trump's campaign is against people of color, then this is not a clear-cut case because the demographic is not clear-cut. Number two, these individuals are undocumented. And if these individuals are undocumented, then there is a warrant to detain and deport them, just like Obama did, okay? And Obama is an individual of color. So if Obama is deporting all these people, why can't Trump? He has racialized this campaign, repeatedly maligning Mexican immigrants. I think I know exactly which statement they're talking about here. And again, that's really a huge misrepresentation of Donald Trump. Now, I don't like defending Trump all the time because honestly, I'm not a Trump guy. I voted for someone else in the election. I voted third party because I didn't think Trump represented me as a citizen. It didn't represent the kind of America I wanted. But that being said, Donald Trump has definitely been dealt a bad hand by the media in their coverage of those statements. I think it is absolutely true that when you actually listen to the statement that Donald Trump made, the one where he famously used the word rapists, that he is not implying that every single illegal immigrant is a rapist. He's not implying that every single illegal immigrant is a rapist and a murderer and someone who goes around stealing and all that stuff. That is not the implication. That is also not the generalization. That is not the context. And therefore, that is not the meaning. But let's move on then. All over the country, we hear of Latinos being targeted by Trump's enforcement machinery. You mean undocumented immigrants who also just happen to be Latinos, because guess what? We border Latino countries, which means that we are likely to get, if anybody is going to cross the border illegally, it is likely to be someone who also happens to be a Latino. If the United States bordered poor European countries, then we might get poor Europeans crossing the border. And let's be clear here, Latinos is a very broad group that can be classified into a number of different ethnic groups and ethnic backgrounds. Because just look at Mexicans, for example. You've got a lot of Mexicans who are Indios. That means they're descended from the Aboriginal populations of the Americas. There are also Mexicans who are mestizos, and I'm using the old ethnic terminology here, so if that offends some people, I just want to remind you that I'm not trying to launch any racial slurs against anyone. I'm just trying to describe individuals here. Mestizos, who are of mixed descent between the descendants of the Europeans and the Aboriginal populations. Then you also have the Criollos, or Peninsulares, and just general various groups who are mostly or purely descended from Europeans who moved to the Americas. And there are a lot of those people, and I'm pretty sure some of the illegal immigrants are those individuals. In other words, they're just as white as Donald Trump. Then you've also got blacks. You've got blacks that are mixed with the Aboriginal populations. Then you've got blacks that are mixed with whites, who are historically called mulattoes. And you've got everything in between. And I'm pretty sure there's also some Chinese in there as well, coming through Mexico's borders. So you've got all sorts of different races, some of whom are similar to Donald Trump. And the basis of Donald Trump's deportation of these individuals is not of their race. It is of the fact that they have violated the borders of the country, which is a criminal action. Regardless of what other criminal actions you have committed, that remains a criminal action, even if you haven't committed any other crimes, that is still a crime, and people need to take responsibility for it. And that is why many of these people are being deported. Okay. The threat of being torn apart from their family and forcibly removed from the country they call home is becoming a stark reality. Okay. Trump, through his ICE agents, just like Barack Obama, by the way, are rounding up immigrants on their way to work and shackling, detaining, and deporting them before they have due process or can even let their families know what is happening. Now, I don't know about that last bit. I don't know if they're not having due process or anything like that. I can't really comment on that. There's also a ban on migration from majority Muslim countries. But, again, let's get the facts straight here. Some of the biggest Muslim countries in the world aren't covered by that ban. Now, that clearly implies that the ban isn't actually against Muslims, because if you were actually aware of why this ban is put into place, it's from countries that are considered high risk for travel. And they don't want to deal with having to sort out people coming in from those countries. And that's why there is a travel ban. An effective ban on refugee admissions, and of course, the notorious wall with Mexico. Yeah. Add to that the repeal of DACA, which protected 800,000 dreamers from deportation, and now the potential end of TPS for up to 400,000 immigrants of color, returning them to countries where their lives may be in danger, or forcing them to go underground in the US. Forcing them to go underground in the US. In other words, breaking US law. Thank you very much for justifying their deportation. Actually expanding the number of undocumented people in this country. But again, you add these numbers up, and that's 1.2 million. But there's a lot more undocumented individuals. Well, these are the documented individuals. There's a lot of undocumented individuals, and for the safety of the country, they need to either get documented or be removed. And by removal, I'm not talking about killing anyone. I'm not talking about sending people into a war zone. I'm just talking about sending people back home so that if they really want to get to the United States, they can go in a manner that actually respects the laws of the United States. Some of the biggest pieces of this ethnic cleansing case are also found in proposals to restrict legal immigration, which, by the way, have been going around for centuries. Legal immigration has always come in waves. Sometimes the US has wanted to have less, sometimes they have wanted more, sometimes they've changed the quotas around. This isn't something that's new to Donald Trump. This isn't something that's new to Republicans. This isn't something that's new to Democrats either. This is just a part of the United States history that has been around for the last 200 years. Arkansas Republican Senator Tom Cotton has proposed to undo the core tenets of family-based migration by shedding the cornerstone of the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965 that finally ended racial quotas for people seeking to immigrate from Latin America, Asia, or Africa. Now, of course, I don't think there's any necessity for ethnic quotas or racial quotas. I don't think the United States government should be making race distinction in legislation. Now, of course, there are a lot of other people who actually would prefer the United States makes race distinctions in legislation. And those people are people that I would call racists. The final piece of the case is not about policy. It is about deliberately whipping up an environment of fear and racial hatred. Okay, you mean there's some fear-mongering going on here, some race baiting, that leads to hate crimes and self-deportation. What? Self-deportation? You mean people actually leaving the country? We saw it on the campaign trail when he attacked Mexicans as rapists and drug dealers. Again, you're taking it out of context. The president's actions are fanning the flames of ethnic cleansing and encouraging individuals to join him in his efforts. When a white supremacist yelling, "Get out of my country," murders an Indian immigrant in Kansas, which, by the way, Donald Trump has no control over, and 1 billion people in India watch or read about it, Indian parents tell their children not to come to America. And you know what? If they don't feel safe in America, then maybe they shouldn't come. There you go. I am not excusing the white supremacist. I'm saying that what this person is doing is wrong. You know, murdering people, not because he's an Indian, but because he's murdering people. That's wrong. We need to take these racial distinctions out in our law. That's why I think that hate crimes are just really dumb, because it really places the emphasis on who the victim is rather than what the crime is. This is just as powerful as a new law or executive order. Trump's dog whistle was piercing when he pardoned Joe Arpaio, the former Arizona sheriff and a national symbol of anti-immigration malice and divisiveness, calling him an American patriot. Now, I don't know about Joe Arpaio. I don't know what's been going on here, so I can't really comment on that. President Trump's latest decision on TPS is anything but surprising. His animus against immigration of color is clear, but he's now moved decisively beyond rhetoric and everyday racism into the realm of international ethnic cleansing. International? You mean he's going into other countries in doing this? The 50,000 Haitians who stand to lose everything want better lives for themselves and their children. Well, how about this? They have a temporary presence in the US, which means that they should go back. That should be the condition of the word temporary, that if you're there temporarily, it means that you should be going back at some point. Want better lives for themselves and their children. Well, life's tough, folks. Not everyone ends up being the richest person alive. We can't all live in a communist utopia, because guess what? It doesn't work. It's never worked. It hasn't worked in the British colonies when they were founded. It hasn't worked in in the Soviet Union. It hasn't worked in South America. It hasn't worked anywhere. We can't live, we just can't force these things. Just because someone wants to live a better life doesn't mean you have to force other people to give that to them. If they want to give them a better life, they'll give them a better life. But that should be an individual system and not something that is forced by oppression. Each is a human being with value and rights who deserve respect and dignity. Okay. Each is a mother and father, sister and brother, neighbor and friend. And by the way, if I'm going to approach this with the same methodology that you're approaching Donald Trump Donald Trump's statements on Mexicans, this sentence would imply that that person is both a mother and a father at the same time. In other words, all Haitians are hermaphroditic? Is that what you're saying? Of course not. So if you don't want that standard applied to you, why don't you stop applying such weird standards to other people? Defeating this administration's ruthless campaign of ethnic cleansing is the central moral imperative of our time. Except for the fact that there's no ethnic cleansing going on here. Come on, guys. You're better than this. Sometimes I wonder, where do people come up with these things? Okay, Deepak Bhargava is president of the Center for Community Change, and Kika Matos is the director of Immigrant Rights and Racial Justice for the Center for Community Change Action. Racial justice. What is that? It's another word for racism is my guess. Racial justice. Because justice should be based not on race, but on universal rights and on a universal standard of right and wrong. If someone beats you up, the severity for the punishment and the intensity of your protection should be no different in respect for which race you are and which race your assailant is. That's my opinion. Now, I think I'm done here. If you think I went too far, if you disagree with my opinion, if maybe there's some information that I didn't notice, or maybe there's something I don't know, maybe I misrepresented someone in here, please do leave in a comment in the comment section below. If you'd like to co-host an episode of this where we look at an article, not necessarily from the Huffington Post, we can get an article from anywhere as long as it's interesting, something to talk about. You know, it doesn't even have to be something political, as long as it's something that is worth a little bit of dialogue. That's fine. Just be respectful to other commenters. Be respectful to me. I'll be respectful to you, not because you're respectful to me, but because I have values. So anyway, thank you all for watching, and I will be seeing you all next time. And Awiltus over and out.